This hobbit has a gun. Full disclosure, this deck idea did not come from me. This came from some random fucko at my card shop who really wanted to have a hobbit with a gun be his commander's just main method of playing. We also decided it needed to be landfall for some reason. I don't know where that decision came from. Anyway, we're gonna talk about this hobbit right here and her gun. Today's commander is Ernis Gloomstalker. She has the ability to play lands from the graveyard whenever she swings at your opponents. She also comes equipped with this Gatling gun called Street Urchin. And just so you know, by having Street Urchin on the battlefield with your commander, you basically get to have control over who gets to play Magic the Gathering or not. Your friends came to the card shop to have a fun time ignoring all of the terrible troubles that exist in the outside world. That is too bad. It is time to take an entire mouthful of freedom seeds, and Ernis is going to be the one pulling the trigger on those. Street Urchin allows you to pay 1 mana, sack a creature or an artifact, and deal 1 damage to any target. However, it is specifically our commander who gains that ability, and because our commander has Death Touch, oh boy, she's going to do fun things to everybody's face holes. So, here's generally how this is gonna work. We're playing a landfall strategy. Land comes onto the battlefield, and we get to trigger something from, say, Elsworn Giant. That's gonna make a 1/1 creature, and that's all fine and dandy. Then our commander is gonna say, that's a fun 1/1 creature. What if I just loaded it into my gun and just pulled the trigger real quick at my opponent's creature? That's gonna deal 1 damage to it, nothing big. Oh god, it was a gut shot. I guess they're bleeding everywhere. Their stomach acid is eating them out from the inside. That is going to be every single person's reality when staring at Ernis Gloomstalker. So we are going to be using landfall to generate enough tokens so that Ernis is going to be able to keep the board clear, and then we're going to punch people in the face with things that are huge based on our lands, like, oh, I don't know, Rampaging Brontodon. Let's go ahead and talk about the damage package. Here's how we're going to be killing our opponents. We have 2 methods of doing so: combat and burn. Rampaging Brontodon swings and gets 1/1 for every land we have. Multani has 1/1 for every land we have as well. Both of these are going to be able to just cram their hands into our opponent's face holes and make them suffer. We're also going to benefit all of our tokens with a Rumbleweed. Costs 1 less for every land in our graveyard, has Vigilance, Reach, and Trample, and will give all of our creatures 3/3 and Trample when we play it. Then we're going to have burn as a secondary option. That's going to be via Tunneling Geopede, which burns our opponents for 1 whenever we hit landfall, Spitfire Lebok, which burns our opponents for 1 whenever we hit landfall, and Valakut Exploration, which allows us to get Impulse Draw whenever we hit landfall. But if we don't use the Impulse Draw, it just turns into acid all over their hairlines. So we're just gonna go ahead and burn our opponents, to death. Then we need to make sure that we are spawning enough tokens for our Gatling gun to be able to go brrr, and the way to do that is by spawning a crap ton of tokens. We have 10 token spawners in the deck, but remember, we can sacrifice any creature or any artifact to trigger these abilities. And the strongest of our token generators is Omnath, Locus of Rage. Anytime a land enters our battlefield, we make a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token, and that creature token can just win us the game by punching our opponents, but it also works incredibly well as a token generator for our commander. Also, anytime one of our tokens dies while Omnath is on the board, if it is an elemental token, Omnath will deal 3 damage to a creature or a player, meaning we can spread the love around. Again, these are freedom seeds. We just want them to sprout from inside the chest cavities of our opponents. Ignore the wheezing breathing that they have afterwards. I'm sure a doctor will see to them until their life hits 0. Nesting Dragon is also an all-star in this deck. Anytime a land touches our battlefield, we make an 0/2 red dragon egg, which is fine, but we can sack the dragon egg to our own commander's ability in order to create another dragon. So we just get double duty off of all of our tokens. And another alternate win con is our Rampaging Balos. We got a bunch of 4/4s off of this. These can win games in their own right. Magda the Horde Master says anytime we commit a crime, which is anytime we use our commander's GAT ability, we then generate a tapped treasure, but only once per turn. We can also sack 3 treasures in order to make a 4/4 Scorpion Dragon token with flying and haste. That's pretty damn good. That's pretty freaking effective, all things considered. Let's also put a Serenith Greatworm. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, it enters the battlefield. Oh, wait, this reads off of any of our opponents doing anything for a game of Magic the Gathering. We make a tapped Power Stone token. Power Stone tokens are artifacts. Our commander can load artifacts into the gun. It's just shotgun pellets. We're just going to turn somebody into last night's deer supper. Anyway, then we have Toggo Goblin Weaponsmith, and the weapon he makes is rocks. The rocks that he makes can be loaded into our gun, too. Whenever a land touches our battlefield, we make a rock. We can then equip the rock to our commander and then have the commander throw the rock, which is a perfectly reasonable way to blow up our opponent's things if we don't have access to our background. But if we have our background, we can just, put the rocks in a gun instead of bludgeoning people, Return of the Jedi style. Then we have Phylath World Sculptor, which spawns a bunch of tokens when it touches the board based on how many lands we have. Ignore the rest of the text on this. The rest of the text doesn't matter. Spore Mound makes a 1/1 green sapperling when we hit landfall. Elfsworn Giant makes a 1/1 elf when we hit landfall. And Crawling Sensation makes a 1/1 green insect anytime a land gets put into the graveyard from anywhere, but only the first time each turn. So if we want to make maximum use of this card, we need to make sure that we are putting lands in a particular sequence. One on our turn, one on our opponent's turn, one on the next opponent's turn. You understand where this is going. And our commander recurring lands is not enough. We also want to run a Perennial Behemoth in order to play lands from our graveyard whenever we need to as our lands per turn, and a Timeless Witness so that we can recur anything from our graveyard if our opponents happen to harm us in various ways, which they will, and they would be perfectly justified in doing so because we came to a card fight with a 9mm. So it's perfectly reasonable to just hit us a lot. Hence, Timeless Witness having Eternal Eyes, so even after we get one thing back with this, we can get another thing back later. And also because it's a 26-cent Eternal Witness, that's also a reason to run this, not just the fact that it has Eternal Eyes. Anyway, that does it for the core strategy of the deck. Make dudes, aim those dudes at our opponent's dudes, make them have no dudes, and punch our opponents in the gonad dudes. Then we are going to talk about how we're going to draw through our deck to get to those dudes. We're going to be running a 10-card draw engine, and we're going to try to lean very heavily into what our deck does best. So we're running an Escape to the Wilds, which allows us to play an additional land on the turn we play it, and also lets us have 5 cards of Impulse Draw. Faithless Looting lets us discard 2 cards to draw 2 and has Flashback. This is perfect for throwing lands in the grave for our commander. Demand Answers does similarly. We can sack an artifact, which we're making, or get rid of a card in our hand to draw 2 cards. Magmatic Insight can crack a land from our hand to draw 2 cards, and Highway Robbery can sacrifice a land or discard a card in order to draw 2 cards. Dropping lands on the battlefield, if we pay 2, we can get another card draw with Seer Sundial, and we can pay another 2 if we use the Tireless Tracker in order to crack that clue token to draw a card. Or we can take the clue token and put it into our 9mm and aim it at our opponent and see if we have Hollow Point or not. I don't know. It just depends. It's entirely up to you. Do you want to see the fun cards in your deck, or do you want to see the fun corpses on your opponent's field? You take a pick. Then we have Ichor Wellspring, which enters the battlefield, drawing you a card, and then we can sack it to draw another card with our commander's ability. Then we have Harmonize. This lets us draw 3 cards. It's the weakest of our draw spells. Now let's talk about the strongest of our draw spells. It's Snake Umbra. This not only protects our commander, giving it the ability to have totem armor, but if our commander does damage to an opponent, we then draw a card. So let me get this straight. We have 5 tokens on the board. We spend 5 mana. We hit our opponents 5 times with that damage, and then we draw 5 cards. Yep, seems fair, seems reasonable, seems perfectly balanced. Thank you, Wizards of the Coast. Your mixing of commander things between this and partner, you never miss. Wizards, you never miss. You never create any problems for our player base in the future, ever. Anyways, let's talk about removal. Not like we haven't already been talking about it, right? Yeah, we don't need to run too much removal in this deck. Our commander's doing a lot of that, but let's talk about some all-stars. Decimate blows up 4 things, 1 for each mana you spend into it. Artifact, creature, enchantment, and land. Now, obviously, if our opponents don't have artifacts, that'll never happen, they always will, people have mana rocks, then you can just aim it at one of your own. If people don't have lands, again, will never happen, people need lands to play Magic. This card, you can just throw whichever thing your opponents don't have, you can throw it at yourself, so it ends up being pay 4 mana to kill 3 things. Either way, card does a lot of work. Blows up an artifact, creature, enchantment, and a land. Then we have Acidic Slime, which can get rid of any non-creature card, basically. Artifact, enchantment, or land. Can't kill planeswalkers, but that's fine. Also has Death Touch. It's great to just kind of sit back. We can also just give rocks to this with our goblin guy, so that's fine. Then we have Terrastodon, which enters the battlefield blowing up 3 non-creature permanents. This can be your opponent's lands, if you're an asshole. Then we have Woodfall Primus, a 6/6 trampler that blows up a non-creature permanent when it enters the battlefield, and also has Persist. Sack it to your commander, get its ability to blow up a thing again at instant speed. Use Return to Nature to get rid of artifacts, enchantments, or problematic cards in graveyards. Use Road to Ruin in order to ramp yourself, and then also aim all of your lands at somebody's just neck. And then finally, we have Bonds of Mortality. This draws us a card when we play it, but most importantly, we can use it to remove Indestructible and Hexproof from any creature our opponents have. Now, our commander doesn't have to wait for our opponent to move the Swiftfoot boots to somebody else. We get to rip the boots off and then aim a gun at their foot. Then we have one board wipe, a chain reaction, because that's all we could afford at $16. I already went $1 over budget, so it's a $16 deck now. You get chain reaction instead of, I don't know, blasphemous act. That's enough removal. Let's talk about ramp in this landfall deck. We are going to be running 18 ramp pieces, not counting our commander and the ramp piece that is also a gun that we talked about earlier. The first one is Heaped Harvest. This gets us a land when we play it, and then when we sacrifice it, we get another land. You could sacrifice it to its own ability, but why do that when you could sacrifice it to our commander instead? And just do all kinds of fun stuff with that. Primal Druid gives you a basic land when it dies, as does Viridian Emissary. They are just elves. We are going to shove not so cleanly into our Freedom Spitter. Then we have Hour of Promise, searches our library for 2 lands of any kind, puts them on the battlefield. Beanstalk Giant searches our library for a land, puts it on the battlefield, and then is a win condition after the fact, because our opponents won't have blockers, let's be fair. Font of Fertility can sack itself to get a land out of the deck. Farhaven Elf gets a land out of the deck and we touch it on the board. Mycosynth Wellspring doesn't ramp us, but it does give us a land when we play it, and we can crack it to our commander to get another land. Vastwood Surge gets us 2 lands out of the deck when we play it. Searcher Tomorrow gets us a land untapped when we play it, and we can play it on turn 1 thanks to its suspend ability. Explore lets us draw a card and get a land. Colony Heart Expedition gets us 2 lands after we crack it. Springbloom Druid sacks a land to get us 2 lands. Wood Elves grabs any forest out of our deck, use it to grab a dual land. Solemn Simulacrum grabs us a land, and then we can sacrifice it to draw a card, which our commander really wants to do. Ulvenwald Hydra has reach, has power and toughness equal to the number of lands we have, and can get any land out of our deck onto the battlefield. Free Strider Lookout does way too much work in this deck, because anytime we commit a crime, we can look at the top 5 cards of our library, grab a land from them, and put them on the battlefield tapped. We can only do that once per turn, but that means we can do it 4 times a turn cycle, so this is going to be doing plenty of work for us. And finally, Stone Cedar Hierophant. This thing's busted. Whenever a land comes into play under our control, we can untap her, and we can tap her to untap a land. Play a bounce land and use her to get lots and lots of oodles of mana. And because our commander is allowing us to untap lands, or untap her by playing a land by swinging, I mean, honestly, what more could you want? It's doing everything you possibly could want. As for lands, we are running 13 forests and 6 mountains. We are only running 3 dual lands, a Sheltered Thicket, a Cinder Glade, and a Gruul Turf. Gruul Turf because it can bounce utility lands, it can bounce itself so we never miss landfalls, and Cinder Glade and Sheltered Thicket are searchable with our various cards in our deck. Then we have a ton of fetching lands, since our commander can play lands from the graveyard. Evolving Wilds, Escape Tunnel, and Terramorphic Expanse are all the same card. They let us crack them in order to get a land from the deck onto the battlefield tapped. Then we have Cabretti Courtyard and Riveteer's Outlook. These immediately suicide themselves to get us lands out of the deck. Then we have Jund Panorama, Naya Panorama, Promising Vein, and Shire Terrace. These are all the same card. They give us 1 mana, and we can use them to crack and get a different land out of the deck if it's a basic anytime we want. I love these because these are great budget lands. They come into play very quickly, they get to give you land very quickly, and then they only get to be mana sinks to get new lands if you desperately need those lands. Then let's add in the ramp lands of Myriad Landscape and Blighted Woodlands to get 2 lands out of our deck, and finally an Ash Barrens in order to crack it with basic land cycling early and then play it with our commander. We're also going to run a ton of utility lands, especially ones that can put themselves in the graveyard. Hidden Nursery and Hidden Volcano are all-stars here, as they give us effectively Cascade anytime we play them. Tranquil Thicket, Desert of the Fervent, Smoldering Crater, Slippery Karst, Forgotten Cave, and Desert of the Indomitable are all great as well, as we can cycle these if we happen to get flooded on lands. And a Cryptic Caves is also fantastic, since we can use it to draw a card by sacrificing the Cryptic Caves, and then of course we can play it again with our commander. Whew, that is a lot, and there's tons of stuff that I would have loved to put in here, but couldn't because I already increased the budget of the deck by $1 to allow for Omnath. That was the reason. Like, I could have played this without Omnath and played 1 extra land, and I chose $16 deck with Omnath because it was way more powerful with access to Omnath. So, yeah, let's talk about playing this thing. Alrighty, speaking of Omnath, I like this hand. It has Omnath in it, it has Spitfire Lagok, it has a bunch of lands, it has a way to make tokens. It's perfect. I don't need ramp. I have a Shire Terrace. I can force ramp. Let's draw for our opening turn, play the Shire Terrace, and pass to our opponents. Next turn, we're going to play a mountain, tap 2, and we are going to grab our gun and unholster it. Next turn, we are going to play a forest and tap 1, 2, 3. Here is Ernis. She's out and ready to do her thing. Next turn, we are going to play a land, and then we are going to pay 1, 2, 3, play Wood Elves. Wood Elves is going to grab a Cinderglade from our deck, and it's going to come into play untapped. Then we're going to tap the Cinderglade and crack the Shire Terrace in order to grab a mountain from the deck and put that into play tapped. Then we're going to swing at somebody with our Death Touching Commander, and we're going to play that Shire Terrace from the graveyard onto our battlefield. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. We are 1 mana away from playing Omnath. Let's go ahead and move to our next turn. We don't need Wood Elves anymore, so let's just go ahead and pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Man, I really wish I didn't have to do it this way. This is not an ideal way to play this particular setup. So what we're going to do is we're going to aim Wood Elves into the chamber, and we're going to crack it away with Street Urchin, and we're going to blow up one of our opponent's creatures. They don't need those creatures anymore. We need them to not have creatures. Then we're going to play a little bit of setup. We're going to get the Nesting Dragon out, and while I would love, absolutely love, to gain access to another land, set everything up, I don't have access to it because we missed a land drop, so we're just kind of screwed right now. We move into turn 6. There's our mountain. That's perfect. That mountain is going to add us a little egg. So here is our dragon egg, and let's go ahead and add a dragon egg token here. Not dragon egg token. I want to make sure that we always have access to these because we're going to be making a lot of these. So the tokens on the side here are not real tokens. They're tokens I'm going to spawn from. So our commander sees a dragon egg. Then we're going to crack the Shire Terrace to go into our library, and we're going to grab a forest to put onto the battlefield tapped. That is going to spawn another dragon egg. It's going to spawn. There we go. Spawns another dragon egg. Now that we have the dragon egg out, let's go ahead and swing our commander at an opponent along with our nesting dragon. And let's clear the way. Our opponent likely has stuff that we need to get rid of. So we're going to spawn our Shire Terrace thanks to our commander swinging. That's going to create another dragon egg. Then we're going to pay 1, 2, 3, and we're going to crack all those dragon eggs in order to get rid of 3 creatures that would be in the way of our commander. And that is going to spawn 3 dragons as well. Now, we've done all that, and we're going to pass through steps and phases, and let's just say that If our opponents play any more cards we don't like, we're just going to crack 2 dragons away. They don't need those cards. We don't need them having trading cards. We've eliminated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 creatures off the battlefield this turn. Then we move on to turn 7. There's Terastodon. We are no longer in the world where we need it. We get to just do dumb stuff. Let's pay 4, and let's play Spitfire Lagak. Anytime we get a land out, Spitfire Lagak is going to do its thing and burn everybody for 1. Speaking of that, let's crack the Shire Terrace away, go into the library, let's get a forest tapped, and that is going to spawn a Dragon Egg token and burn our opponents for 1. Then we swing with our creatures again, getting Shire Terrace back. Does it come into the battlefield tapped? No, it just comes onto the battlefield. That spawns a Dragon Egg. If our opponents have creatures, we are going to blow up one of those creatures by blowing up a Dragon Egg, spawning a dragon. And that's going to burn our opponents for another one because of the Spitfire Lagak. And then we're going to crack the Shire Terrace on an opponent's turn in order to go into the library and grab a forest again, spawning another Dragon Egg. And you kind of see where this is going. Every time we use the Street Urchin, we are killing a creature. We have eliminated like 11 creatures right now. Our opponents simply don't have the capacity to play Magic the Gathering. We have eliminated Magic the Gathering playing as part of their available praxis. They are currently sitting here wondering when the slaughter will end. They have to kill the Nesting Dragon, but if they kill the Nesting Dragon, it doesn't save them because we just play the Serenith Great Worm. And if they kill the Serenith Great Worm, it doesn't save them because we just play the Spore Mount. And if they kill the Spore Mount, it doesn't save them because we play the Omnath. And if they kill our commander, we have enough mana, we just replay the commander. We're in a position of dominance. They don't have options. And if one of them gets a win con out that's non-creature based, we just play Terastodon and it goes poop. And that's not counting anything else we could play. Also, if the Omnath goes as well, we have Crawling Presence or Crawling Sensation. We have 5 token producers right here. All available, all able to use their thing. All we had to have was one of our fetching lands. We just needed Shire Terrace, and Shire Terrace is piloting us through this game. We didn't need any other fetching lands. I would have loved to get other fetching lands. Perennial Behemoth and an Evolving Wilds would be great. This is the worst of our fetching lands for this strategy, and it doesn't even matter. Our opponents don't have anything on their battlefields. They are dead. They don't get to play Magic. No commander for them, ever. They want to equip Swiftfoot Boots. We just aim a gun at the creature before the Swiftfoot Boots gets on it. That's the reality they're dealing with right now. I don't want to add money to this deck. It doesn't need it, but we're going to do it anyway for you. If I'm being honest, there's very little a deck like this actually needs in order to function. But let's go ahead and pretend that you wanted to add more money to this monster. Let's pretend for a moment that you decided that you needed a way to kill your opponents faster. In that world, in that hypothetical reality, you want Scute Swarm. This one, right here, Scute Swarm. You play a land, you double the amount of Scute Swarms you have. That's what it does. I want you to consider for a moment, though, before you put Scute Swarm in your deck, that playing Scute Swarm in a deck like this, that already prevents your opponents from playing Magic the Gathering, is a violation of the Geneva suggestions. So just be warned. And, while we're at it, Tireless Provisioner adds a little too much gas to the commander. Adding extra token generators like Zendikar Royal, Avenger of Zendikar, Greensleeves Morrow Sorcerer, these just give you so much more consistency adding more of these to the deck. It's kind of nutty. I'm saying that if you do this, your opponents will be very upset. And if you make it harder to kill your commander with a Swiftfoot Boots and a Lightning Greaves, you're also going to be a terrible person. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do that. I'm just saying it is an option you have access to. And also, there's Cultivator Colossus. Just there's Cultivator Colossus. You play a land when it comes out, and then it lets you draw a card, and then you get to play a land again, and then you draw a card. It can dig through so much of your deck, and then It has power and toughness equal to the number of lands you have. This will win you games. I'm not saying you take all of the burn spells out and put in Cultivator, Colossus, and Avenger of Zendikar and Scootswarm. I'm not saying you do that. I'm just saying that in a hypothetical world where you were to do that, this deck would be going a bit over the top. That's all I'm saying. And, you know, if you want to go over the top as a viewer, you could follow me over on Blue Sky, subscribe to this channel, check out my Patreon and support me over there. Pick up the channel playmat to rep the channel. I've got a main channel where I talk about important stuff to me, and I've got a live stream that I'm on every Monday through Thursday. You could go to these things, and it would make you just... You'd be doing so good by me if you did these things. Anyway, thank you for watching. This was a lot. Hope you guys enjoyed. As always, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full-time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Lil Ururaka, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fire Shard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.